Hey guys, welcome back to the Anne's POV podcast. My name is Rianne, and I'm so glad to have you guys here with me this week. So let's get into the episode. So before I start this episode, I wanted to give you guys a little life update. This whole week, we just been moving in slowly and buying necessities and stuff. And honestly, the one thing about it is I keep on going to the store with a list. I'll come home and be like, oh my God, I should have gotten this, that. It's like little things that I usually don't think about because they were always around. So now having to just buy everything, start from scratch it's a little hectic in a way, just because it's constantly running back to the store to get things that we actually need. Anywho, yeah. It's been a little hectic this week just because of the move and everything. It's a lot of work that I didn't really prepare for, I guess. Another thing is Bizzle's staying at my parents' house until we kind of get things situated. And I honestly really miss him. I've always wondered why people had such crazy attachments to their pets. But now I get it. I genuinely do, because I miss him so much. So yeah, I can't wait to get everything situated so he can move in with us. But anywho, getting into today's episode, I just wanted to talk about how life has just been lifing recently. And I've just been so busy with getting settled in, working, and just trying to get everything organized. And I haven't really had much time to think. So I have been checked out for a bit this week, which is honestly understandable because, I just had so much on my plate all at once. But it was really nice to have this past weekend where I really didn't have much to do. And it kind of felt like a little bit of a recharge in a sense, so I can go into the week energized and good to go, you know what I mean? Anywho, in addition to this, this is kind of something that I've done last week, but as I was moving, I was moving over some of my books and stuff like that, but then I have a box full of journals. And honestly, I keep my journals from previous years just because it allows me to reflect sometimes and just go back to kind of what I was thinking and feeling and struggling with at the time. So it's a little bit of a blast to the past. And one thing I did notice is that 95% of those journals are not complete because I tend to have this bad habit of finding a cuter journal and being like, oh, okay, I'm going to start writing in this one, which is probably wasteful. And I'm trying to reduce the amount of journals that I have, especially if it's gonna be half empty. You know what I mean? So I was looking back at journals from 2022, 2021, 2022 to just see what I was thinking, just because so much time has passed. So I was what was I doing February 9th or whatever of 2021. During that time, I was really, really struggling with time management, right? And just figuring out routines. And it was just something that I was so obsessed with because I like to have a very organized day. And I also wanted to be as productive as possible, mainly because it was such a new chapter for me, because when I was 18, I was going to college. And when I was going to college, I was only going to go for 2 years just because I had a little extra early education before then, right? So I was going to graduate in 2 years, and I feel that's what really got me, right? I was a little overwhelmed because okay, people usually go for 4 years, they have a little bit more time to figure things out. So yeah, I was a little overwhelmed. And back then, I'm gonna say, like, what is it, 3 years ago, I had control issues because I wanted to control everything. So I was watching so many YouTube videos, so many podcast episodes of talking about how to find the perfect routine. And I know I like mentioned this a lot before, where I was just trying to find the perfect recipe to have the perfect day. So I designed this schedule for myself that was super strict. Like, I knew what I was going to do every single hour, every single day. And there was like no room for flexibility or any of that, right? So what happened was I was living on autopilot for maybe like a year or so. And the worst part really was the fact that I didn't even know how I felt about it because I never took the time to actually feel it, right? And it became my new normal because that's what I thought was normal. Like, you see all these people being productive on the internet, and you're like, how can I have every day be like that? And I was just trying to look for perfection when it came to that. So what I did was I had a full schedule of like being a full-time student. And we all know being a full-time student is a lot of work, especially when you're doing a harder major. So I had that on my like shoulders. And then I was like getting overwhelmed because technically I was in my junior year and I didn't have internships lined up. I had no work experience, none of that. So I was out here trying so hard to find a job. And when I did find a job, I was working as a clinical assistant for the first year. And I was like, I was taking on more than I could handle because that's what I thought adulting was. So I was working 20 hours a week and also studying like maybe 6 to 8 hours a day. And my schedule worked at the time, right? Like, it technically worked, right? All I had to do was get up at exactly 6 a.m., get out the door by 6:30, get to work at 7, stay there until 4. I would usually like skip lunch every single day just because I would be catching up on work. And then from 4 to like 6, I would be doing as much homework as I possibly can. Then I would be going to the gym for an hour. And at this point, I'm exhausted. And I would get home at like 7 or 8 and just pass out. And that was just like my routine, right? That's the routine that I designed to be the most productive version of myself. And honestly, it didn't really take me long to pick up the routine, right? And once I pick up a routine, it was just like going through the motions for as long as I can. And I was just so checked out that there was times where I didn't know what day it was, but I knew what needed to be done because it was a pattern. And the one thing about how our brains work and everything is it likes routines, right? It likes patterns. Like, when it picks up a pattern, it doesn't need to use as much energy anymore because it's like on autopilot now. It's able to go on autopilot because it knows what it needs to do. And that's just how our brain is designed, right? Patterns are easy. Patterns are just something that we can do without even thinking. And that's the whole point of pattern recognition, right? So what happens is we kind of fall into this default network system that our brain has set up, where you're not really focused on the external world. So you're physically there, but you're not mentally there. You know what I mean? And that's just our design, right? We don't want to use energy unless we need to use energy. So one of like the major things that happens when you're in this like autopilot state is it kind of, your brain activity moves away from the prefrontal cortex, right, where we make all our decisions, and it kind of just moves towards areas of memory, which allows you to do tasks without putting much energy into it. And honestly, that's just how I lived my life for a period of time. And I'm not going to say that living on autopilot for a bit is bad or is negative because it's part of our survival mechanisms. But it's about duration. I feel like a lot of things is about durations. And when I was 18, I was gaslighting myself. And I was a master gaslighter, especially when it came to myself. And I convinced myself that I was doing what I needed to do, right? It honestly felt like I was following a script, but I never really took a moment to really think and just be like, okay, why am I doing X, Y, Z? And the routine that I built for myself wasn't just like school and work and all this. I had a routine for everything, and it was extremely, extremely strict. I knew exactly what I was going to do in every single moment of my life. It was all routine for me. And there's times where my routine was broken, which, yeah, like, sometimes you get out of routine. And when they are broken, it would literally just like throw me off completely. And I did not like that at all. I didn't like getting out of routine, because when I get out of routine, I have to engage in things, right? Like actually put a lot of energy into the things around me. And I did not like it because I was so accustomed to my routine, right? And when you're accustomed to a routine and you do the same thing every single day, then your brain actually stops engaging, right? Everything kind of just blurs together. But then that's what I was comfortable with. That's what I thought living life was. Even when it came to having fun, like I would schedule having fun in like my actual general schedule, right? And it was like, even though my hobbies would change, like okay, like painting week or this whatever, it was still very dull, because once you're still in autopilot, like, yeah, it's Saturday night, I'm gonna do this specific hobby or this exact thing, it becomes less enjoyable because you're still checked out. You're in this constant state of being checked out, and that decreases dopamine in your whole reward system. So you're not really enjoying it as much. And honestly, now looking back, life was honestly so boring during that time, because not only was I mentally checked out, but I was also just like going through the motions. Like I don't really recall a lot of these things, and it was just like, okay, like I just want the day to be over. A lot of the time, just because it's like I can't wait till the weekend. That's when I kind of have more free time and I get to breathe. So I would like hold my breath throughout the whole week and finally let it go on the weekends. But the main issue with that was I was just following such a strict routine that there was no space for anything else. There was no space for even taking a moment to think. I would just go, go, go. And at the end of the day, I'll go to bed and start again tomorrow with the same old routine. And we all know that that will get extremely, extremely boring. Life will feel a lot duller because it's extremely boring. And it's not a vibe. It's not a vibe. So it's kind of crazy because I was reading this book last week. I haven't finished it yet because I've been so busy, but I'm pretty sure I mentioned it to you guys before. It's called The Giver, and it was just like kind of eerie. But basically it's a society where everything is controlled. Like you're given your name, your family's given to you, your career, your schedule, and people had no choices. There was like no real freedom when it came to that. You just had to follow the system and do as you're told, you know what I mean? And it just like kind of hit me because like reading that book and then just going through a lot of my journals, it really hit home for me, you know what I mean? Just because I was so obsessed of finding the right routine to be the most productive version of myself, you know what I mean? Anywho, I feel like to some extent that book made so much sense, because from the jump we're given like a certain script and routine to follow, right? Like you're gonna go to school at a certain age, you're gonna have that schedule that's made for you. And to some extent, those routines are good because it helps you build good habits. Routines help you build good habits. But honestly, the key is to understand why you're doing what you're doing, right? Like, why do you want to have this habit? Is it going to benefit you in any way, shape, or form? Understand why those habits are helpful, but also you need to have more flexibility in life in order to really experience it. Because one thing about us is once we start like having these patterns, right, in our day-to-day life, not just in one thing, like one area, like going to the gym is a good habit to have, right? Working out is a good habit to have. But when you make everything a routine from sunrise to sunset, it creates a pattern for your brain to recognize it. And once it recognizes that pattern, you're going to take the back seat and you're going to be on autopilot. And that's just a way for us to reserve our energy. And what more does your brain want than to reserve energy? And to top that off, one of the hardest things to do is kind of like break the cycle of being on autopilot, right? It's not like just something that you wake up and you're like, okay, I'm going to turn that off. But it's something that you just need to work on it gradually. And I feel like to work on it, the thing that you have to do is you have to question yourself. You need to understand why you're doing the things that you're doing. Why are you working from 10 to 5? Why are you waking up every single day at 7 a.m. to go to the gym? Why are you journaling in the morning? Why are you journaling in the evening? You know, once you like start to question things, you're more engaged in them. You're not just doing them to do them. And honestly, that is one of my biggest goals for the rest of my life, is to be more present and to experience life for what it is rather than just going through the motions. And another thing that I've realized when I was in autopilot was I was constantly overwhelmed and stressed out, because everything that we do is a stressor, right? Like from working out to actually going to work, all those are stressors. And I felt like I never really processed any of these. And since I was like shifting into survival mode, my brain just stopped prioritizing deep thought and emotional processing. So I just felt kind of numb in a way, and I was just going from week to week into different months, and I just felt so disconnected from myself and everything around me. And honestly, it really explained all the brain fog, me being unable to focus, and all those other things that I was just going through, because I never really took the time to actually evaluate what was going on. And honestly, it wasn't until I stepped out from my environment, my day-to-day environment, to see what's actually up. Because once I took myself out of there, I was given space and time to just think and kind of just figure things out and really just like question everything. Like I was questioning myself. I was like, am I just doing things to do things? Is there a purpose to why I'm doing these things? And a lot of the times you do set routines in order to achieve a goal. And I'm like, is this the way that I want to achieve those goals? So just question everything, right? And just like really evaluate yourself. Like it's kind of like an interview. And once I did that, I stopped filling every single second of my day with obligations, because I knew I was taking on too much. And on top of that, it allowed me to make more room for spontaneity, right? Which allowed me to just try things that are new and actually be more engaged in what I'm doing, rather than just like going through the motions and doing what I need to do. You know what I mean? So yeah, I just stopped forcing myself to follow strict routines. I forced myself to understand why I even have certain habits or routines, and if it's benefiting me or benefiting me in the future. And on top of that, I also allowed myself to change my mind, because there's times where I forced myself through things that I really did not want to do. And yeah, sometimes you do need to force yourself to do things, right? It's push yourself through the pain. But sometimes it's just things that I genuinely do not want to do and will not benefit me at the end of the day. So it's like just being able to say no to things and allow myself to change my mind, and like really just ask myself, is this what I really want to do today? Whether it's just like taking a slow morning, journaling, or just sitting with yourself, doing absolutely nothing, that you can decide that. And You just need to make that decision for yourself. Another thing is you need to practice presence. It's not something that you just achieve and put on your shelf. You know what I mean? You actually have to put energy into it. And once you do, you're actually engaging in something, right? So you're mentally there, you're thinking about it, you're putting a little bit more brain power into it rather than just being on autopilot and being dissociated completely. So yeah, if you ever feel like life is just happening to you, that's just a sign that you need to take a pause. And honestly, there's only two major events, I would say, in life itself. The first one is being born, which is obviously out of your control. And then the second one is figuring out why. And that is going to be a lifelong journey where you have to ask questions and just challenge everything. I feel like that is really what living is for you to question everything. Don't just go with what the majority says life really is. Ask questions and come up with your own conclusion. Anywho, that is all I have for you guys today. I hope you guys really enjoyed this episode. If you did, please don't forget to leave a comment and a review. And if you like this podcast, please share it with friends, family, whomever. And if you guys ever want to connect, I am on socials at AnsPOV. And just know I love hearing from you guys. So just, stop by if you want. So yeah, I hope you guys have an amazing rest of your day. And I will see you guys in the next episode.